Hello, and welcome to Lorekeeper Sanctum. I am your Lorekeeper, and today we will be back in Thedas to continue my series on the Evanuris of Dragon Age. The topic for today's video is Andruil, Goddess of the Hunt, Lady of Fortune, the Huntress, or possibly the Goddess of Sacrifice. The Evanuris were the gods of the Ancient Elves, worshipped by the Dalish. But as Solus informs us in Dragon Age Inquisition, they were not gods, but powerful mages.
The Evanuris were elven mages. How did they come to be remembered as gods?
Slowly. It started with a war. War breeds fear. Fear breeds a desire for simplicity. Good and evil, right and wrong, chains of command. After the war ended, generals became respected elders, then kings, finally gods. The Evanuris.
We learn in the Trespasser DLC that they had enslaved the Elven people, and that Solus, who is also known as Fen'Harel, locked them away to free the Elven people and stop them from destroying the world.
I sought to set my people free from slavery to would-be gods. I broke the chains of all who wished to join me. The false gods called me Fen'Harel, and when they finally went too far, I formed the Veil and banished them forever. Thus I freed the Elven people, and in so doing, destroyed their world.
You love the Fade. Why would you create the Veil to hide it all away?
Because every alternative was worse.
Meaning?
Had I not created the Veil, the Evanuris would have destroyed the entire world.
Andruil is the creator of the Way of the Three Trees, Vir Tanadal. In Dragon Age Origins, and again in Inquisition, we get the following codex entry about her. Andruil, Goddess of the Hunt. Hear me, sons and daughters of the people. I am Sister of the Moon, Mother of Hares, Lady of the Hunt, Andruil. Remember my teachings. Remember the Vir Tanadal, the Way of Three Trees that I have given you. Virasan, the Way of the Arrow. Be swift and silent. Strike true, do not waver. And let not your prey suffer. That is my way. Vir Borasan, the Way of the Bow. As the sapling bends, so must you. In yielding, find resilience. In pliancy, find strength. That is my way. Vir Adhalen, the Way of the Wood. Receive the gifts of the hunt with mindfulness. Respect the sacrifice of my children. Know that your passing shall nourish them in turn. That is my way. Remember the ways of the hunter, and I shall be with you. From the charge of Andruil, Goddess of the Hunt. I think there are a few things worth pointing out in this codex entry. Firstly, in Virasan, the Way of the Arrow, with the things Andruil has been known to hunt, which will be detailed later in the video, it makes me question exactly what kind of prey Andruil may have been hunting. In the Vir Borasan, the Way of the Bow, Andruil appears to be promoting the values of submission. As we know that the Evanuris had enslaved the people, it seems that this was to instill a submissive nature among her followers as a social construct to shape their society. This is clearly a work of propaganda. And finally, in the Vir Adalen, the Way of the Wood, I wonder if there's some hidden depth to these statements. As we will see in a later codex entry, it wasn't just animals that Andruil was known to hunt. And when she refers to the sacrifice of her children nourishing, is she merely speaking about hunting, or could this also serve as a reference to blood magic? Andruil seems to depict a bloodthirsty, power-hungry, and thrill-seeking nature. Andruil is also known for her love of animals, with the hare and the hawk being named specifically as sacred to her, and the Dalish believe that the owl is her messenger, which also has a connection to Falandine, so that's a bit confusing, but typical for the information we are given about the Evanuris. The following codex entry is found in the Exalted Plains in Dragon Age Inquisition. Andruil's Messenger. Long ago, when our people were strong and free, we roamed the world and could do as we pleased. But we were taught by Andruil, Mother of Hares, to respect nature and all of the Creator's creatures. Even though the earth was ours, we did not misuse it. They say the great leaders of the people would pray to Andruil for guidance. Where shall we hunt? Where shall we raise our holla? Where shall we settle and build? Andruil would send her messenger, the owl, to show the people the way, and they would follow him to where the land was blessed. Always keep an eye out for the noble owl. You never know. Andruil might have a message for you. As told by Keeper Gisharel to the children of the Rallifaran clan. Keeper Gisharel's work is clearly going to lead to quite a bit of disappointment among the Dalish when they learn the truth about their gods.
The Dalish are going to shit themselves.
The people weren't strong and free. Andruil was sacrificing them for power. A later codex entry will also have a clear account of Andruil misusing the land quite badly. In the Exalted Plains, Veilfire runes reveal an image of a hawk and a hare chasing the sun. The hawk and hare represent Andruil, while the sun would represent Elgar'nan, likely depicting some sort of conflict between the two. A codex entry in the Storm Coast provides us with the following. Constellation for Venial. Commonly referred to as the Oak, the constellation for Vanis is generally represented by a towering tree with leafless branches. Many scholars believe this is a representation of nature that harkens back to the lore of the early Neromenians, whose beliefs largely aligned with animism prior to the rise of old god worship and the creation of the Tevinter Imperium. Others, however, believe Vanis was originally a constellation of the Elven people, specifically a depiction of Andruil, goddess of the hunt. Vir Tanadal, or Way of Three Trees, is a central tenet of Andruil, and some think that Vanis originally represented this concept. From a study of Theodosian astronomy by Sister Oran Petrarchius. I'm not entirely sure why this constellation is named differently in the title and the entry, if that's an error or if it was intentional. From the established lore, we know that Gillinan was the chosen of Andruil, with some sources stating that she was her beloved. Andruil turned Gillinan into the first Hala. We know that Gillinan was known for creating many creatures, and Andruil had spent a year killing them, before offering her the chance to join the ranks of the Evanurus on the condition that she destroy her creations. Some of the creatures of the sky were given to Andruil as a gift from Gillinan. I suspect that griffins were likely one of these creatures. If you would like more information on this, please refer to my video on Gillinan. In the book, The Masked Empire, we get an interesting story of Andruil and one of the Forgotten Ones named Anaris. They were in disagreement over which of them would get to punish Fen'Harel. In the story, Fen'Harel was captured by the hunting goddess Andruil. He had angered her by hunting the Hala without her blessing. And she tied him to a tree and declared that he would have to serve in her bed for a year and a day to pay her back. But as she made camp that night, the dark god Anaris found them. And Anaris swore that he would kill Fen'Harel for crimes against the Forgotten Ones. Andruil and Anaris decided that they would duel for the right to claim Fen'Harel. And what happened? Brialla asked. What do you think, Dallin? Philassen smiled. You have heard enough of my stories over the years. Brialla thought for a moment. Fen'Harel found a way to trick them both and escape. He called out to Anaris during the fight and told him of a flaw in Andruil's armor, just above the hip, Philassen said, nodding, and Anaris stabbed Andruil in the side and she fell. Then Fen'Harel told Anaris that he owed the Dread Wolf for the victory and ought to get his freedom. Anaris was so affronted by Fen'Harel's audacity that he turned and shouted insults at the prisoner, and so he did not see Andruil, injured but alive, rise behind him and attack with her great bow. He smiled again and looked at Brialla. Anaris fell with a golden arrow in his back, badly injured, and while both gods slumbered to heal their wounds, Fen'Harel chewed through his ropes and escaped. You have heard enough of my stories over the years, Dallin. This is one of the more unusual entries, but also very intriguing. I definitely find it kind of funny that Andruil wanted to punish Fen'Harel by making him a bedservant for a year and a day. It's also one of the few entries we get about the Forgotten Ones, a topic that has me excessively curious. If true, it would also reinforce the idea that Andruil was a bit of an impulsive thrill-seeker. We also get an ancient riddle that tells us, the owl sees the hunter, the Hala flees from it, the dragon hunts it in turn, while the wolf outwits them all. I suspect in this case the owl is Falendine, the hunter is Andruil, the Hala would be Gillinan, and the dragon is likely Mythal, though it could be Elgar'nan or any of the Evanurus really, and the wolf would be the Dread Wolf, Fen'Harel. Andruil was known for creating powerful weapons. We are given the following poem after receiving the item Andruil's gift and unlocking a codex entry in the Temple of Mythal. She took the gathering storm, trapped its fury in golden limbs, and strung it with the screams of the south wind. Andruil, blood and force, your people pray to you. Grant that your eye may not fall upon us. Spare us the moment we become your prey. She shook the radiance of the stars, divided them into grains of light, then stored them in a shaft of gold. Andruil, blood and force, save us from the time this weapon is thrown. Your people pray to you. Spare us the moment we become your sacrifice. So many questions. What exactly was this gathering storm? And what were the screams of the south wind, or the radiance of the stars? We see the line blood and force twice, each time before prayers of fearful elves, and a clear example of why she may have been the goddess of sacrifice. While I'm not entirely certain about what the references depict, the radiance of the stars seems to be a source of great magical power, possibly something from the Fade, or maybe something to do with Titans. Perhaps the following codex entry, from Dragon Age Inquisition, might help enlighten us a little bit about what this is talking about. Elven god, Andruil. One day, Andruil grew tired of hunting mortal men and beasts. She began stalking the Forgotten Ones, wicked things that thrive in the abyss. Yet even a god should not linger there, and each time she entered the void, Andruil suffered longer and longer periods of madness after returning. Andruil put on armor made of the void and forgot her true face. She made weapons of darkness, and plague ate her lands. She howled things meant to be forgotten, and the other gods became fearful Andruil would hunt them in turn. So Mythal spread rumors of a monstrous creature and took the form of a great serpent, waiting for Andruil at the base of a mountain. When Andruil came, Mythal sprang on the hunter. They fought for 3 days and nights, Andruil slashing deep gouges in the serpent's hide, but Mythal's magic sapped Andruil's strength and stole her knowledge of how to find the void. After this, the great hunter could never make her way back to the abyss, and peace returned. Translated from Ancient Elven, found in the Arbor Wilds. Source, unverified. While it's impossible to say that these entries are talking about the same weapons, it does seem possible that the powerful weapons she created were from the void, especially as there seems to be something sinister about the poem discussing her bow and spear. Andruil seems to have a very strong bloodlust as the huntress and with her association with sacrifice, and as I suspect, that would refer to blood sacrifice. I suspect that she entered the void searching for power, possibly in the form of lyrium, which could explain an aspect of this codex entry regarding what she was using to craft her weapons and armor. It looks like she was one of the first to encounter something like the Blight, possibly a blighted titan and corrupted lyrium. It may have been this that started the entire cycle. If you watched my video on Gillinane, you may have heard my speculations that after Andruil was affected by whatever blight, or proto-blight she found in the void, that Gillinane may have begun experimenting with it, perfecting it, weaponizing it, turning it into the blight that we know now from the games. The following codex entry, found in the Fallow Mire in Dragon Age Inquisition, gives us another clue regarding the void. The Empty Ones. The Empty Ones were a small and short-lived cult based in Navarra and known for worshipping the Blight and, by extension, the Darkspawn. Some confused the Empty Ones with followers of Tevinter's old gods, a reasonable mistake since archdemons are said to be tainted old gods. However, it is clear from the histories that the Empty Ones did not worship Dumat and his ilk, but the Blight itself. Following Andraste's death, many of her followers fell into a deep despair. They believed that the prophet's betrayal and execution marked the beginning of the end of the world, and that the Maker's wrath would soon come upon them. The most fatalistic of them all gathered together to prepare for their doom. They called themselves the Empty Ones, for they saw themselves as worthless husks, ready to be swept away by the Maker's hand. It is unknown what passed then. The Empty Ones grew to believe that the Blight was to be the tool by which the Maker would end all of creation. They preached that it came from the void, a place of nothing, and that returning to the void was something to be celebrated because it meant an end to all pain and all suffering. Some mistakenly take this to mean that the Empty Ones worshipped evil, but that is an oversimplification. The Empty Ones believed the world to be beyond redemption, and that it was the Maker's will that it be destroyed completely. There are tales of Empty Ones scouring the deep roads, searching for Darkspawn, whom they saw as the Blight's prophets, in order to assist them in bringing about the next Blight. Predictably, the beginning of the second Blight saw the end of the Empty Ones. The entire cult made its way to the Anderfels, where they stood in the path of the encroaching Darkspawn, and singing in praise of the oblivion that was to overtake them, were consumed. from Before Andrastianism, The Forgotten Faiths, by Sister Rondwyn of Tantervale. These cultists worshipped something called the Void as the source of the Blight and believed it was something the Maker had intended to use to bring an end to the world. It reminds me of what Sola said about the Evanirus destroying the world. And ironically, if the Evanirus are trapped in the Black City, which seems apparent from the Veilguard promotions we have seen, a place that had supposedly been the Golden City and the seat of the Maker, but in all likelihood was the lost elven city of Arlathan. That's not to say that I think Arlathan was the Void, but that Andruil and the other Evanirus had discovered the Void and the dark powers that it contained, which likely resulted in Arlathan becoming blighted as the Evanirus sought out more and more power. I think there are too many clues connecting the Void to the Blight and the Black City to think that this is a coincidence. And before we move on from the topic of darkness and the Void, I would like to present one more detail. Here's a quote from the Architect in the book The Calling. "There is a taint that is within the Darkspawn. It supplied its own answer. A darkness that pervades us, compels us, drives us to rail against the light. It is in our blood and corrupts the very world around us." The creature gestured towards Bregan with a withered, taloned hand. "It is also within your blood. It is what makes you what you are, what you sense in us, and we in you." The Architect refers to the Blight as darkness, which seems to be a second clue that whatever weapons of darkness she had made seem likely that they are also connected to the Void and the Blight. Additionally, the plague that ate her lands seems to describe the Blight. If you've been following my series on the Evanirus this far, you may have heard my speculations on the old gods being directly connected to the Evanirus. While some of them are more obvious than others, I think that Andruil could be connected to Zazakel, Dragon of Chaos, as the most likely candidate. Most of what we have discussed for Andruil would paint her as having a chaotic nature, her bloodlust, desire for power, and with her seeking bigger thrills and power in the abyss, bringing madness and plague back with her. These factors would seem to make her the best embodiment of chaos among the Evanirus. I would like to present one additional bonus theory regarding Andruil. Is it possible that Sarah could be a reincarnation of Andruil, or of part of Andruil's spirit? Having lost her memory and possibly her immortality, is it possible that Sarah, who excels with a bow, could be Andruil reborn? Is that why Solas seems so keen on learning if she remembers anything when she's around elven ruins? She does seem to have flashes of sensitivity to magical or supernatural effects. Her tarot card in Dragon Age Inquisition is oddly similar to the mosaics of Andruil, with the same bow positioning, and the meaning behind her tarot cards do suggest both chaos and new beginnings. Sarah also uses a unique character model, being taller than other elven females. Might that suggest that she could be an ancient elf? We do know that Mythal had toyed with Andruil's memory, though if it's a reincarnation, that element might not be important. She expresses frequently that she hates the Fade. Her greatest fear is also nothingness, which, if she had spent thousands of years trapped in a prison in the Black City, might that be a good reason for her to fear the nothingness above all else? She also has a disdain for all things she considers to be elfy, which we know that the Evanirus showed a serious contempt for other elves. Additionally, she is only romanceable by a female inquisitor, suggesting she's a lesbian or possibly homoflexible. If Gillenane was Andruil's beloved, it appears to be another thing the two of them have in common. And finally, to connect this to my previous theory, could it be possible that if an archdemon, such as Zazakel, contained part of her spirit, that if that spirit was destroyed when a Grey Warden killed the archdemon, that would permit her spirit or a fragment of her spirit to reincarnate, finding a new host? As Zazakel was slain during the Second Blight, it could be possible. It could also be possible that if the Evanirus' immortality was bound to that of the old god dragons through effective immortality, such as what we see with Corypheus, that Andruil and some of the other Evanirus may have died in their prisons in the Black City, releasing her spirit completely. It would fit with Sarah's chaotic nature. This is speculation on top of speculation, and it's just a theory, but I find it intriguing, nevertheless. And that's all I have today for Andruil, Goddess of the Hunt. Thank you for stopping by Lorekeeper Sanctum. I'm your Lorekeeper. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you will come back soon. If you like this content or found it useful, please like and subscribe. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Until next time, friends and fans of fantasy.